Welcome to the Beyond Divorce Embracing Change podcast. My name is Michael Flores, and I will be your host while we explore the complex journey of divorce with empathy, insight, and practical knowledge. Whether you're contemplating separation, in a divorce, or looking for support post-divorce, our episodes provide expert guidance, stories, and strategies to help you through every step of the process. We are actual therapists, helping clients who sit on our couches every day through their difficulties of divorce. You are not alone. Join us as we delve in and find solutions that give you hope again. We're glad you're here.
This podcast is not intended to replace legal or personal help. This podcast is for informational purposes only.
Well, good day, everyone. Thank you for being here. Obviously, we enjoy having you. We love that you're joining us. We hope that you will subscribe to the podcast to get all the latest episodes. And hopefully, we really are hoping for some feedback. We would love to hear from you about what's helping, what more you may be interested in so that we can continue to put out phenomenal content for you. So definitely want to make sure that we stay in tune with you guys as much as possible. I'm really excited about today's episode. Today, we're talking about fighting fair. One of the questions I hope we can get answered is fighting even fair? So is there even a fairness related to people getting into fights? And I love that Jen's here today. Jen actually has worked with parents, couples, kids and parents. So she's done a combination of so many things. And I think this is going to be a really cool perspective that she can give us on just this overall idea of fair. So, Jen, thank you again for being here.
Well, you're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, I love this topic because I think it comes up so much with, especially with co-parents, couples. I don't know. Let me ask you this. Do you believe that this idea of fairness starts in childhood? Does it start as adults? Where does this come up?
I think it starts with kids. I mean, the first idea I think of when I think of fair is kids on the playground. They want the ball. This kid wants the ball. That wants the ball. We got to have even time with everything. We have to have the same number of presents. We have to have, Christmas time. Everybody wants it to be even because that's what the kids think of as being fair. I think as we get older, though, that changes. And really, the word fair can be a lot of things. It means being honest, having dignity, just, being just in what you want, what the other person wants. But it doesn't have to be necessarily even. It's not the same kind of thought process.
It almost sounds like you're saying fair is just not a perspective. There's actually a deeper rooted piece to it. You're talking about being honest. You're talking about almost the characteristics of a person, who they're becoming as people. And so it goes deeper than that. You said playground. The kids start with the playground. Is this something that you believe is taught, or is it something innate in them, the idea of fairness?
Well, I think it's something innate because I see it with really young kids with toys, 3-year-olds that want to not share their toys. They have to learn to share. And I don't think they think of it as being fair, but in a way it is the same thought process of how we learn to, quote, coexist with other people.
Sure. So do you think fairness for people, they put it in the category of right and wrong?
Yeah.
Yep. So if it's unfair, it's wrong.
If it's unfair, it's wrong. It's not justice. They can't have what they want.
So let's go back to the question, and the title is fighting even fair? So when people are disagreeing, is there a fairness tied to that?
Yes and no.
Oh, can you elaborate?
Well, I think when you're arguing and you disagree with someone, usually there is a feeling that you want it to be fair. Okay, they're not being fair to me. They're not listening to me. They're not hearing me. This isn't fair.
It's what's missing.
Their bias. It's all against them. It's you against them. And so I think that's the problem, though, is we get stuck in that thought process. And we have to figure out a way to get out of it and be able to really think about what is the actual goal here.
I'm glad you said that, Jen, because I almost wonder if people aren't understanding that the first place of fairness
Mhm.
isn't in the other person, it's within yourself.
Correct.
It's almost like, am I being fair?
Yeah.
I'm seeing them being unfair, but am I being fair to them or to the situation first?
Exactly.
So that's what you when you said what you said, I just started kind of flowing through there. So let's talk about a couple of types of conversations that people might have.
Yeah.
I like to call them collaborative versus uncollaborative, right? So maybe when I say that, help define that for the listeners. What is a collaborative versus an uncollaborative conversation?
Collaborative is going to be where two people are working towards the same goal. They're focused on what the topic is or whatever the issue is versus how they feel. Collaborative is not that you have to agree with each other. You can agree to disagree, but being able to hold a conversation where you're really managing your emotion,
Right.
your feelings, your history sometimes can get in the way. Uncollaborative is when we start with a name calling and that's where I think of when uncollaborative is they adamantly are butting heads. They don't want to talk to each other. They dislike each other to the point where they can't have a conversation.
Right. So they're letting how they feel about one another
Yeah.
intrude on the ability of having a collaborative conversation.
Exactly.
You said something that I've heard many times when people don't feel like they're making movement in conversation, which is we can agree to disagree. Explain what that means. Like, give me more. I've never heard someone say, what do you mean by I agree to disagree? So, or we agree to disagree, or we can I've never heard someone elaborate on that.
Well, I think the way I think about it, especially in the realm of dealing with divorce and co-parenting and that kind of thing, is really just thinking about, I don't agree with you, but it's not about me and it's not about you. It's about our kid. It's about our finances. It's about what are we doing with this situation.
Is that what gets missed in the fair-unfair conversations?
Oh.
It's we miss that going back to what we're really doing here.
Yeah.
Because once we go to bat ourselves, maybe, I don't know. Go ahead and tell me what you're saying.
The thing I think about is that people tend to, when they're mad and they're upset, they don't really fight fair. They start personally attacking the other person. They're calling them names. They're bringing up past issues.
Yep.
They're making assumptions about the other person without allowing that other person to have a voice.
Sure.
And I think, especially with kids,
Right.
that happens even more so. Think about, your teenager and your parent arguing because they don't want to wear what you want them to wear. Whatever it is, it's not important, but the point is the kid wants a voice.
Mm.
And so that's that fighting fair is allowing everyone and, like you said, agree to disagree.
Right.
Okay, no, I don't like that, but I will allow you to wear that because you're covered.
It's almost like maybe the fair is the give and take. Maybe it's the idea, and I'm not saying that's what it is, but I'm wondering, that's why we're having this conversation, if this deserves more of my attention. So let me give you an example. Let's say a parent has a child who has all these freedoms. First kid has all these freedoms. They go do things, and they get in trouble, and maybe they get so much trouble they go to juvenile, or they get arrested, or they get cited, ticketed, whatever. And so the parent is now raising the second child, right? So you have a sibling, and that child has all these restrictions.
Because the first child was acting out.
Right. So then the second child who has all the restrictions is like, well, that's not fair. You let my sibling go and not have a curfew and whatever it may be. So then you got to look at it going, okay, so how can I do this in a way so that my kids don't feel like I'm being unfair?
Yeah.
Right. But I'm also, how do I describe that? I'm not being unfair, but I'm also doing what's in the best interest of my kid. Because I think so many parents run into that with kids. Siblings fight it's like they're comparing each other all the time. So let's talk about fairness from that aspect. When my kids, I've got a group of kids, okay, I'm divorced, I've got my kids, they say dad does this and I don't do that, or mom does this and dad's not doing this. And so the kids are complaining because they're comparing the parents' homes to one another and how this isn't fair and dad lets us that, or that's not fair, mom lets us do that. And what do we do with that?
Well, I mean, when I'm meeting with kids that are in that situation,
Right.
usually I'm asking them what's different at each parent's house.
Okay, so you ask for the
I
differences.
ask them what's different and what do you like about that? A lot of times it's kind of funny. It has to go back to co-parenting, and sometimes I do have to pull the parents in and talk to them and say, okay, how does y'all's setup work? Is it together? Are you co-parenting, or are you separate households where you have a difference of opinion on dad's roles, mom's roles?
You're asking for the line.
Yes. Where's the line? And either it's fine to have two sets of rules as long as the kids know what they are.
Ah,
And that's the question. Sometimes the kids are like, well, mom, let's just, well, okay, but if it's dad's house, he gets a say.
yeah.
So, you have to kind of work within that.
Right.
And, I've talked to some of the parents, and I've asked them, I said, would it be considerate to have similar rules in both houses, especially for younger kids? They tend to get confused when there's too many differences. So trying to get them to be more collaborative and work together to have a similarity in their households so the kid doesn't feel so disconnected when he goes back and forth.
Wow.
Because that's what the kids complain about the most, is they're more comfortable at one house than the other.
Do you suppose that when you take that approach, that the kids and the parents find that becomes the fair? Because we're pulling it all in. We're not agreeing on it, but we're going to pull it all in. We're going to discuss it, and we're going to find that line.
Yeah. Well, it also goes back to parents not putting the kid in the middle. So if they can define it for the child, even if it is mom's rules, dad's rules, okay, fine. The kid knows that.
Mm-hmm.
They know where the line is.
Mm-hmm.
They know I can do this at dad's, I can do this at mom's, and we're good. And everything's coexistent.
Yep, they can coexist. I think everyone loves that word, but they just like, how do we do it, right?
It's so hard sometimes because you have personalities and ideas, and sometimes it's just asking for the kids' input. What do they think is fair?
Right. Well, and you know what? That's a good question. I think it's great to ask a kid and let them. Janan said in the opening episode that kids have great ideas, and I don't think it's problematic to ask a kid, tell me what you're thinking about this particular, whatever difference. And some kids really give some really cool feedback. I've had kids say, as long as they agree, I don't care.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I'm like, how powerful if the parents could just say, my kid said, it doesn't matter as long as we agree on it.
Well, and what's interesting is a lot of times I hear from kids that their biggest wish is just that their parents got along.
That's it.
That they were nice to each other. So, and because that's the thing is when you're fighting, and this kind of goes back to our topic, when you're fighting fair, you have to take the emotion out of the argument because you can't be fair if your emotion's there.
So that might be where the unfair conversation's coming up, is because there's emotion back behind it.
Yeah,
so
your feelings are hurt. Yeah, your feelings are hurt. And so typically when people in general, your feelings are hurt, or you feel like someone's attacking you, you get defensive.
I had a conversation. It's funny. I had a conversation with an attorney the other night, and the attorney said that the kids were complaining to the amicus attorney, which some people may not know what all those are, but an amicus attorney is an attorney appointed by the court, right? That is the eyes and ears of the court, right? And they typically serve the children, but for the court. So they're actually a court affiliate. The amicus attorney was meeting with the kids, and the kids' argument was, we don't feel we're being heard.
Mm-hmm.
So my question to the attorney was, when they say that, are they saying I'm not being heard, or they're not agreeing with me?
Yeah.
You go, huh? So what? Give me more. What do you?
Well, I think that's probably. I think a lot of people think if they don't agree with me, they don't hear me.
So they feel they're being treated unfairly.
Yeah, and then your feelings get hurt. So again, it's like a big circle, and it can go round and round and round.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that sometimes we have to break that circle. And by doing that is taking that feeling out. Say, okay, I understand this is for the best of my child.
Right.
I don't like it.
Right.
But I feel like it is the best thing for them. I mean, I have a lot of parents who, I don't want to discipline my kids, but I'm like,
Yeah.
but they know they have to do something in order to change the behavior pattern.
Maybe what's really unfair to the kids is when a parent's not checking themselves first.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe that's what's unfair.
It's so totally true. I hear so many kids tell me that they walk in the door and they're mad.
The parent?
The parent walks in the door, coming home from work, and you can tell they're mad.
The kid says this to you.
The kid says this. And the thing is, though, because we're people, they think, well, what did I do wrong?
The kid says, what did I do wrong?
Yes.
So they're not even looking at the parent going,
No.
they're saying, what did I do wrong?
Yeah, because the first thing out of a parent's mouth is they're yelling or they're upset about something or they're snappy or they're short. Now, it could be because someone cut them off on the highway driving home from work.
Sure.
Has nothing to do with the kid.
Mm-hmm. Or the co-parent's not answering my message.
Or,
something.
somebody's not answering a message. Yeah, co-parent's not answering
3 days ago, I hadn't heard back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, but the kids, they all, especially younger children, tend to feel like if the parent is upset, it's something they did. They're at fault. Even though they're not. They have nothing to do with it. And I think in that sense, they think it's a little unfair. They're like, well, I didn't do anything and they're just yelling at me. And
then they feel attacked.
And then they get defensive and they start acting out. And it just goes around and around. But I mean, parents coming back to the parents checking their own emotion
right
when they go to switch gears to hang out with their kid.
Yeah, so being mindful of not projecting on your child with your own stuff. Yeah, that makes sense.
And that's, definitely, especially in divorce situations where you are having a conflict between parents, not putting that at the kids, allowing the kids to just be the kids. So
allowing the kids to be the kids. We'll say that one more time. Allow the kids to be the kids.
Yes.
That makes sense. Let's talk about, maybe we talk about some good conversation topics.
Yeah.
I like listeners to kind of have something that they can use. One of the things I've argued before on podcast is I feel like there's great information people hear, and some people can take that and learn how to kind of apply it to their own situation. But if I could give like a method, like saying, hey, this is something you can remember, you can use this. And I've talked about this. I think I've talked to you about it, but it's the 3 C's. And we call them the 3 C's of good conversation. The 3 C's of good conversation are being clear, being collaborative, and courteous.
Yeah.
Did I say that right?
Yeah.
I thought so. Okay. Clear. Okay. We have, what's our saying here about clear? I'm sure you remember that. Clear
I don't
is.
remember.
You don't.
Clear as sky?
Clear sky. That's it. That's the one.
Wait a minute. What is it?
I had a conversation with someone the other day, and they say, hey, I just need to let you know this. I need to be upfront with you. And they told me something that was probably a hard thing to say. It took a little courage to say it. And as a result of that, I recall looking at them and said, well, that fits exactly with what we do here as a team, is clear as kind. Yeah. And you can say things with clarity without being hurtful, right? You can still use courteous language when being clear, right?
I think that's one of the most important pieces of that, is being courteous and being kind.
Right.
You don't have to like the person you're talking to.
Tell us more.
If you thinking about going to work in an office, are you going to like 100% of the people there? No. Are they going to like you? No. But you have to be professional.
Right.
It's kind of a weird thing to think of, being professional in your relationship with your ex, but in a way you are. You are the parents. That is your role. That is your guideline, is to help with the kids. So thinking about how you speak to each other, whether you think the kids hear you or not, guarantee you they hear you.
Yeah, they do. And I've had sessions where parents have told me they caught their kids listening at the door.
Oh, yeah.
They thought they were in their private talking, and they're listening at the door. Or the mom's talking to grandma.
Yeah, and grandma's telling them everything.
And grandma's talking on there, or grandma's on speaker or whatever, and the kids are hearing it, and they're one room away. What I've learned, too, is I've asked a parent once in a session, I said, it seems to me you really dislike your ex. And the parent would either agree or disagree, but most of the time they agree. And then I would say, I wonder if your kids know that.
Probably.
Well, they say, I don't know. I don't think I don't try to show that to them. They'll do this. I don't show that to them. And literally session 1 or 2, I meet the kids.
Yeah, they do.
And the kids can tell me a list of things that they've noticed. And I'm like, man, I don't think the parents understand how much this kid's really picked up on.
Well, what's interesting, it's partly because we do so many things, and I know this is getting way beyond this, but we do so many things subconsciously that we don't even realize we're doing them.
But that's what I think leads back to, we sense the unfairness
Yeah.
from something within ourselves.
Yeah.
Because
we're like,
it might
this
be
isn't right.
Right. And it might be subconscious.
Yeah.
And you're saying it starts in childhood, this idea of fair and not fair. And maybe we never grow out of that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I think kids know. It's kind of funny going back to the playground. Is they know that calling each other names, being mean, isn't right. They learn that in elementary school, in kindergarten, in pre-K, in daycare. But I think sometimes we forget as adults
Right.
that still applies.
Right.
And the kids do hear everything.
Correct.
Yeah.
Kids are,
They
man, they soak it in, don't they?
They just like little sponges.
Well, let's go to this.
Yeah.
So we have the 3 C's being clear, collaborative, and courteous.
Mm-hmm.
I believe there's a method to that to create that in a conversation, you have to become curious, compassionate, and carefree.
Yeah.
So we have another list of 3 C's.
Yeah.
If you want to know how to do that, be curious, right? Not defensive. Be compassionate, okay? Kind,
Yes.
right? And carefree. Stay loose with it. Like,
Yeah.
don't take stuff so personal, because then you become defensive when you take it personal, right? So I think that's important. What have you seen? There's another list of 3 C's I'm looking at here, but what do you see? If you can go over those with us, Jen, what do you see when someone isn't being that to you? What are the 3 C's? The three killer C's.
The killing C's.
The killing C's.
It's condemning, complaining, and criticizing. Which out of those, I think criticizing is the worst. Because when you criticize the other person, you're taking them down. You're trying to take them down. Whether you do it on purpose or not, criticizing and criticism is, I think, one of the things that all of us struggle with.
Sure.
Kids do, parents do, just people in general.
Right.
We have to be criticized in order to grow.
Right. Right.
But when you become too critical and you are complaining about the other person often,
Mm-hmm.
You're not giving that compassion to them. You're not giving them a way to resolve the issue.
Right.
If you're constantly complaining, criticizing them, and everything they do is a critical issue, then you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah. Can you imagine going to work and that's all you hear is just the critique or the condemning, complaining to you all the time?
It's hard.
Yeah. You put your notice in, don't you?
I've had a job like that.
Let's not get into our personal.
Not here, but way long ago.
Right.
And condemning them. It's interesting, especially with parents and kids. When their kids hear you complaining about the other parent,
Right.
they take it in as if they did something wrong. I have a 16-year-old who told me she felt her parents fought was all her fault because she was the firstborn.
Wow.
And she said, all of this is my fault because I'm here.
What's it like as a therapist to hear a kid?
It was really hard to hear that because she's so sad and she wants her parents to be happy. She wanted her parents to divorce. She asked her mom to divorce dad.
Oh my goodness.
Because they fought all it.
Yeah.
And but at the same time, she still loves her dad. And it's just a hard situation to be in and work out with her on how she fits in that category.
What a gift as a therapist that we get to help the kiddos navigate that stuff.
Yeah.
Just imagine her trying to do that on her own. It'd be rough. So let's do this. Let's recap a couple things. And first off, I want to say thank you, Jen, for being here. You and I probably could go on for another 50 minutes, an hour, a couple hours maybe. But I think for the listeners to kind of gather what we hope they get today is we know that there's a difference between fair and unfair, and there's ways that people experience that. We talked about the subconscious, checking yourself. We talked about the 3 C's, right, of just really good conversation. If you want to maintain that fairness in conversation, stay clear, stay collaborative, be courteous. You can do that by being curious, compassionate, and carefree.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get into these 3 killer C's, that's when things go downhill. That would be the condemning, the complaining, and the criticizing.
Yeah.
So when you get those, you have to be real careful. So there's 2 parts to that. You have to be careful when you're doing it.
Yeah.
But you have to be aware when it's happening.
Yeah.
And I think my hope for people is when the other person's condemning, complaining, or criticizing, you go into being curious, being compassionate, and carefree. Maintain that state. and I think you'll get more out of it. Do you agree?
Oh, totally. I totally agree. And I think, if parents really think about when you have a disagreement, like I said before, take the emotion out, take the feeling out, respect the other person.
Yeah.
They are still a person. They are still the parent of your child.
Oh, they have emotion too.
They have emotions too. If you have to create boundaries, take a break. If you're fighting and it gets to the level that you're like, I don't want to go here, then stop.
Yep.
Take a break. It's like, we need to.
And that's where those lines we talked about earlier come in. Yeah, because then you know where the break is and where the
Clear
time
definitions.
out.
Clear. Being clear with each other.
Clear is kind. Love it.
Totally.
Love it. Well, let's go back to something here. I want the listeners to know you can continue to get this information. We want to provide you as much as possible. Please follow us on Instagram, and the way to get there is at Brighter Possibilities FC. Again, at Brighter Possibilities, F as in family, C as in counseling. And Facebook, it's Brighter Possibilities Family Counseling. So if you're looking for us on Facebook, Brighter Possibilities Family Counseling. I am so thankful you're here. I'm so honored to have you, Jen, present. I know there's so much more we're going to get into later, but this is a wonderful start for our listeners. And I just want to say before you go, keep going forward. We appreciate you guys. Thanks for being here.